Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Various people from all across the globe are joining us today. And today we're excited to share findings from the CFO Connect Salary Benchmark Report, a detailed look at compensation trends and transparency within the finance world, designed to empower you to better understand your market value. CFO Connect is a global community of over 12,000 finance leaders dedicated to helping you accelerate your career, expand your network, and tackle today's toughest finance challenges. This year's report draws on insights from more than 600 finance leaders, primarily based in Europe and the US, giving you an accurate and practical snapshot of finance compensation in 2025. Special thanks to our sponsors, Spendesk and Deel, whose support made this report possible. Now, I'm delighted to introduce today's panel of experts who will help us unpack these insights. First of all, we have Jessica Billow, Global Head of Talent, Total Rewards for Deel, and Pauline Babel, VP of Finance at AVIV. So Jessica, it'd be great to get a quick introduction from yourself, and then Pauline likewise.
Thanks for having me. I am Jessica Pillow, and I head up Total Rewards here at Deel. So overseeing Total Rewards, which includes compensation in over 100 countries. Deel, we are a global people platform in hyper growth mode. We just hit $1 billion in ARR today. So a lot of excitement over here at Deel. Even though I lead Total Rewards, compensation is my background, right? So I've been in comp for over 20 years in global roles, including companies like HubSpot, Gartner, WeWork, Allianz. Looking forward to sharing insights with all of you today.
Awesome. Thanks, Jessica.
Hi everyone, I'm Pauline Babel. I'm the CFO with a background in tech and marketplace businesses. Today I lead the finance at AVIV in France. AVIV is a European real estate tech platform behind the famous brands in France as Sologer and Meilleurs Agents and Immowelt in Germany. Those are the biggest ones. This is backed by KKR, which is a PE fund I will not present here, I think. And in that role, I operate in a matrix environment, working at the intersection with data, commercial strategy, financial performance. And to be honest, I'm quite passionate about how our role as finance leaders is evolving right now with AI and automation. And I think it can definitely help us, shift from a lot of data crunch and reporting to, I think, more business partnering. And I'm really looking forward to discuss all those topics today with you.
Fantastic wealth of experience there. I'm sure you would all agree. So first of all, just to get everyone engaged and involved, there's a poll that's been put on the question event space just to get your thoughts on salaries right now, what the kind of general feeling is. So how confident are you that your current compensation aligns with market standards? So yeah, please vote now, and that will give us a quick snapshot of current kind of landscape amongst our attendees. Very confident, somewhat confident, or not confident at all. I won't ask you, Jessica, let me.
Yeah, I know. I love it. I want to one-on-one with anyone who's not confident. Let's chat. So
Yeah, well, there we are. We've got a big result here. Somewhat confidence. What percentage do I think goes against what the survey revealed, I think. But yeah, interesting. 20% very confident. 14% not confident at all. Those figures are moving up and down slightly, but generally the majority are somewhat confident that the current compensation aligns with market standards. That might change once you've reviewed this report, or you might think, great, I'm on a good salary. Who knows? But yeah, in any case, we move on. And just before we dive into some questions with the panelists, just a few housekeeping items before we dive in. So please ask your questions using the dedicated Q&A tab on the right. You can also vote for questions you'd most like answered. We'll call about time at the end to answer your question. And after the webinar, we'll send you the full salary benchmark report via email. So keep an eye on your inbox. You'll also receive an email with access to the video replay. So diving straight into the report, that's why we're here today. So the big headline across the report is that finance salary decline in 2025 after years of growth. Average salary across finance roles fell 6% year on year to an average of €120,000. CFO salaries held steady, but VP of finance and finance directors saw significant declines. Drop especially visible in Germany and the UK, and France showed some growth. So, Pauline, quick question to yourself. How do you personally see this playing out in hiring and retention, generally speaking?
I think the company, and I can speak for France, I think that the envelope for salary increase in 25 and even last year were, let's say, a bit less generous than the year before. I think that after COVID, we had a very dynamic situation with a lot of turnover, I think, across all geographies. What I can see for 25 is that yes, indeed, like in, let's say, less generous environments related to salary, I think we can still play on other levers for retention. As for my own team, I'm taking this opportunity, having less turnover, less attrition, to boost a bit on the training side and to make sure that I'm working with my team on, let's say, ambitious roadmaps to have them upskilling if they are not moving from a job to another, so them to be fully ready either to evolve internally in the company on other, let's say, more senior role or management, or maybe leave the company to have a better position somewhere else. But I think this is a good opportunity as well when the market is not so up, to upskill and to strengthen a bit some skills, just like data analysis I was mentioning, and maybe AI technology applied to finance, because it will definitely feed the resume for later.
Yeah, interesting. And Jessica, from a reward perspective, how are compensation frameworks adapting to this shift? Are companies becoming more cautious with base pay and leaning more on variable comp? What are your thoughts?
Yeah. I mean, like to Pauline's point, we've definitely seen less generous salary increases year over year. I think post pandemic, it's kind of this reset of guaranteed cash. I'm seeing that organizations are really leaning into what is the fully loaded cost for an employee. So, not just looking at base pay. So, I think that part of it is slowing down because it's leaning into more total rewards, right? Not just what am I paying you in base pay, but getting creative and highlighting those other ancillary things that are offered, whether it's bonuses, equity, benefits, statutory, all in fully loaded cost is really what we're seeing a lot of companies highlight. Everyone on this call knows how important it is to cost contain your payroll expense or your headcount expense. And so if you can make small incremental moves on that bottom line, then it on the thing that compounds year over year. And so I think in areas where you have high inflation, maybe countries are treating that a little bit different, but I'm seeing companies, ourselves included at Deel, leaning into that fully loaded cost.
And it's interesting you mentioned potentially other factors within comp are playing maybe a little bit more importance now. I did a poll on LinkedIn yesterday to the CFO community asking them what are they placing importance on right now? Is it base salary, equity, bonus, or flexibility and autonomy? The top one was by 52%, and this was over 100 people that voted, was equity. And then the second most important was actually flexibility and autonomy, which is
Yes.
25%. Base salary is actually 4. So you're right in saying that potentially other factors are having a say, not just base salary when people are negotiating.
Yeah. And I'm not surprised by that. And that's what I really think post pandemic, it really shifted how we're compensating, our approach, our philosophy, and especially in similar research on the equity piece, right? So I'm not surprised by that because it gives you buy in into that long term upside growth with the organization. And it allows the company to give different levers to be able to compensate and kind of give that upside there versus just your guaranteed cash.
Yeah, brilliant. And Pauline, I mentioned at the start there, France showed some growth, and we got to point out there are some growth stories as mentioned in the benchmark report. US, for example, when it comes to head of accounting and accounting related roles, salaries went up there, in fact, and that's partly because CPAs are reducing from the top 4, and that's been the case for a number of years. Actually finding a good CPA controller in the US is like gold dust right now. So their salaries are really driving up, and that's probably the most recruited position buyers. So obviously with your background and being in France, why do you think there's some growth there in terms of salaries?
I think my takeaway of last year, because I had to hire a lot of manager position and heads of. And so I was quite surprised to see that we have a lot of very high quality profile for FP&A. So I think that now the market is quite full with FP&A or business controllers, which can be good because we need them. It's just that I was surprised that finally the very skilled chief accountants having the right degree in France, which is expertise comptable. This is rare and this is super expensive. So if you want them to come to your company, you have somehow to offer them a total package, which will be interesting, not only the salary pay, which was the case, I think, before COVID for this kind of profiles. And then I was surprised as well to see that the good finance operation managers are also expensive because they are somehow rare as well. The one being able to speak to CRM team or ERP community, etc., and to make sure they connect the dots as well with the sales organization. Maybe because I'm working in a SaaS environment, I found those profiles to be difficult to hire and as a consequence, kind of expensive.
I
Definitely.
completely agree.
Okay, so it's not only me,
No,
it's a
it's
trend.
not. We actually published a white paper maybe about 3 months ago that based on our research, accountants are outpacing compensation increases compared to software engineers. So I said, okay, we don't want to inflate accounting's ego here, but it is true. And there are a number of professions that we're considering, I don't want to say dying professions in accounting, payroll. Those professions you're seeing a lot of people exit the workforce in those professions. And so the price tag for that talent is just going up and up. So Pauline, you're spot on.
Awesome. And one of the key areas that this report really explored is gender pay and the gap that persists across finance with mixed regional progress. Just to give you a quick kind of snapshot of what was discovered in the report, men earn 25% more than women on average. Gap is highest in Germany, 40%, UK next, 35%, and narrowing slightly in France and the US. The CFO gender gap still wide, but slightly improved. 22% gap in 2025 versus 33% in 2024. But it remains a very controversial and consistent problem, it seems, year on year. So coming to you, Jessica, what's driving the pay gap at the leadership level and what mechanisms are companies using to try and fix this?
I was actually very surprised by this. There's the EU pay transparency that's coming up next year, the directive that's coming up. There are a lot of countries that are requiring gender pay reporting and more, right? Like the list grows every single day. So I'm actually surprised that it is still so wide. However, when I look at the ratio of male to female that are in the profession, that could be contributing. You see the same for sales roles, engineering roles, where it's predominantly a male dominated profession. And so there could be some that's kind of swaying the weight data there. My feedback to that is companies that aren't looking at this now or taking this seriously now, you're already behind. These directives are coming and they're coming very fast. From the comp perspective, I'm seeing a lot of organizations that are just still kind of figuring it out, right? It's expensive to make these changes, but the directive is there for pay equity and fairness. I think a lot of it, at least the studies that I've done, and then looking at the data in this report, a lot of it's driven by the ratio of male to female that are in the profession. But curious to hear what Pauline's, as a female leader in finance.
What's the responsibility do you think the kind of leadership teams have in finance, specifically, obviously the world that you see, making this gap more visible and kind of actionable, would you say?
I will try to stay short on this one because I could stay for hours on gender gap. So first of all, as leaders, we have a responsibility to lead by example and to make sure, if you want to promote more female leaders, to try to unbias a bit ourselves, making sure that in the pipe, For promotion in the pipe for new hybrid, we are still representing and tending to 50-50 when this is possible, to have as much female candidates as male candidates. Sometimes I think in finance, this is not so easy. I can tell that for, I think, a credit manager, I was tending to have 50-50, the candidates panel I had, but like for data analysis, that was just super overwhelmed by male candidates. So I think it depends as well. It's a bit upfront in the chain, like the male-female gap is starting, I think, at university or whatever. And I think we should lead by example and make sure that we are cost-correcting the pipe when this is not totally balanced. And I do think that as finance leaders, we have a role to play in objectifying the gender gaps in our companies, to make sure that the HR or people, organizations got the right data skill set that finance can provide, to make sure that the reports are published and, let's say, communicated across the organization internally. I think that in France, we have very strong regulation about the equality index. Nevertheless, I think it's even more important if we want to promote collaboration and productivity, because I think it's coming from diversity a bit wider than the gender diversity. And last but not least, I think that we have a role to play as leaders and not dropping off the women when they are entering the very intense 13, 14 years old phase where they have small kids. Sometimes this is the window when we have, I include myself, like job opportunities. I think we should try to take them and try to, as leaders, to make sure that those women are well equipped to satisfy both their ambition and the goals of the company. And I do think it's possible.
Yeah, interesting insights. And I think there's you mentioned the gap is from that early stage when you look at universities, when people are making, or women making decisions about career paths. They look at sales, they look at engineering and see it as a kind of male-dominated profession and maybe put off by that. And I think it's up to us as leaders to obviously go down to the universities and grassroots and encourage people to enter professions that they may not have considered before because of the potential perception that it is very male dominated, which can be off-putting. So I think there's a lot of work potentially at that stage, as well as what we've seen, having recruited CFOs honestly for 22 years now. In the last 3 to 4 years, there's been more pushback on us in terms of we want to see more women in the shortlist, which I think is great. And the challenge is there is a shortage. We can only find so many and edit so many. So then what do we do? Do we get them to consider maybe more junior options and VPs of finance, for example, for that CFO role? But then those clients receive a CFO with all the experience who's a male. So then it's a very difficult balance to be addressed there. But yeah, we're finding a lot of clients now pushing back on us, but then we're still experiencing, as they said, bottlenecks. But then it's up to us to encourage those clients to consider other levels, people that can train up and develop into that CFO role as another option. But we sit here year on year and it seems to be a persistent challenge. Slack positive is that it is reducing year on year. Maybe we'll be sitting here next year with that figure reduced again. The other key area that is the most talked about topic ever is AI, of course. And AI brings, of course, promise and certainty to the profession. Just to recap on a few data points from the CFO Connect benchmarking report. So 83% say tech has made them more productive. 92% see tech skills as key to career growth. 52% are excited by AI. Only 6% think it's overrated. Younger professionals, most optimistic, older ones, more cautious. So, Pauline, quick question to you. What's the realistic state of AI use in finance team today? And where are you seeing real kind of return of investment?
As of today, I think that we are definitely already using AI, especially in the procure to pay processes, because it's already embedded in the ERPs and the systems we're using, for instance, to recognize automatically invoices and some data, which is already in the document, etc. So it's already fostering a bit the productivity of certain teams. Nevertheless, I think it's still a bit limited. And I think we are just at the beginning of the journey with AI in finance, because I see some productivity lever to automate even more dashboard, to avoid having coding skills to get more dashboard and connect the data sets together, which is a bit, I think, the pain point we are all suffering from in finance, especially in FP&A. But I do think that we could already adopt a bit more AI in our ways of working. Taking the example of me or other directors or managers, I think that using Gemini or other tools to take the notes when we are doing regular meetings or to help update procedures or update automatically some recurring reporting, I think we could gain time that we could give back to further analysis and business partnering. And I'm pushing like hell my team today to embrace a bit more even either ChatGPT, I don't care the tool, but just for them to take it as the new normal. But I'm still a bit frustrated about the productivity level it could represent for sales, operation, finance, ops, etc. I think we could go much further than that.
Yeah. And
Still
it's quite
frustrating.
overwhelming. Yeah, I'm sorry, Pauline. It's obviously quite overwhelming for a lot of individuals and teams to know where to start with automation, with AI. There's a bunch of tools. What we're finding in speaking to experts in finances across FP&A, across that transactional space, payroll, payables, there's a lot of tools. And I think from an accounting perspective, that's still yet to be disrupted. That's probably why salaries for controllers and CPOs are going up. But is there a type of profile that you're looking for more so now than ever before in terms of that AI savvy profile that can really help you get to grips with where to start with AI?
I think that now we're talking about hirings. I will pay double attention to the resume I'm receiving, to those skills and the projects the person led in the past, related not necessarily to AI, but maybe to automation or to digitalization of processes. Because I know that those profiles will be adapted for the future, maybe much more than people who just had a changing from of section, for instance, being a commercial controller, then already controller, then corporate. I think that I am definitely valuing the skill set of people working cross-functional and having a successful project in terms of automation. In the past year, I hired the person. I think that I paid a premium for her, okay, because she had her toolkit, like for credit management, but she was also very keen, tech savvy, as you said, and she was able to lead from an order to cash perspective. I would say the CRM improvement I needed to get better financial data. So I definitely see a value here. I'm even ready to pay a bit more for that. And I think that those profiles will be the one cracking the AI stuff for the next years.
Interesting. And Jessica, how are companies thinking about AI readiness and in job descriptions, for example, or upskilling programs? How are generally companies thinking about AI readiness?
Yeah, I think very similar to Pauline is that we're looking for someone who maybe they don't have all of the skill sets, but they're willing and they're like very in tune and up on how do we drive efficiency? How do we drive scalable growth? It's more of that like will to win is what we're looking for. I think we're all figuring out AI. Like I'm figuring it out in my role. I use it in my role all the time. Like we're constantly pushing how do you do like how are you just constantly optimizing, and AI is bringing a lot of that, and I think that it is really shaping the type of talent that we're looking for, and I really feel like we're all just kind of figuring it out. I keep saying it's really similar to how big data and data scientists were 7-10 years ago. How do we figure that out? Now we're all figuring out how we're utilizing AI.
Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting in being at the forefront of hiring, I say, finance leaders. We're seeing a lot more commercial roles appear versus any other time. I think those transactional technical roles are being automated as such with various tools. I think even, as I mentioned, FP&A has seen a lot of disruption with various tools. And so then you're looking at strong business partners, strategically minded individuals who could make sense of that data via AI and very quickly make suggestions to the founder, CEO, their boss, and so that they can move quickly from a growth perspective. So yeah, there definitely is a shift to seeing more strategically minded people to join the firm with the more repetitive tasks being automated. So Yeah, interesting. An AI on the resume, if people have automated, have streamlined, have used cloud-based accounting, use some sort of AI tool, that definitely needs to be in the opening paragraph of your resume or CV to really stand out. That is what companies are looking for more and more. So yeah, that's what I would highlight on that front. Half of finance professionals are eyeing new roles amidst kind of wage stagnation. So I think the stat was 49.5% are considering a move, a majority city salary stagnation, most likely to move junior, mid-level roles, so finance manager, FP&A, CFOs, least likely to move, but still watching the market. So that is, of course, a mind-blowing figure. Nearly 50% that are eyeing the market for potential moves. And with obviously salaries really taking a hit, there's no surprise. Based on yourself, Pauline, how are you thinking about retaining your talent in a market where there is a lot of dissatisfaction, generally speaking?
So in terms of retention, I think that as managers, we have a really clear role today. We have a lot of things to do as managers. We know that. But in terms of recognition and coaching, I think we are the best person. We cannot delegate this to HR. We have to play an active role here. And I think that it's key for retention. So I think that for me, what I'm doing is to make sure that I am staying close to my team, and my team is not just on the FP&A because there is not only strategic planning. I'm staying close to finance ops, I'm staying close to accounting, and I am trying to set up recognition. It means sometimes getting them connecting their impact with the goal of the company. And it's not only for the business partners to share this feeling. I think that even for my team, we had a very severe cash situation because of the crisis of real estate in France. And even the cash collectors were having a strategic role to bring the cash home, if I can put it this way. And we tried, even with the managing director, to promote them and to send them recognition that was not only financial reward. I think this is very, very key. And then I think that making sure that the strategy of the company and the purpose is shared to everyone and communicated with a interactive mode is also a retention lever, which is not financial, but super important to retain them in the longer term. And to go back on financial, I'm quite keen on retention bonus, even when they are not very significant and like equity style for leaders. I do think that even the high potential that are still junior can sometimes benefit from a 2 years, 3 years bonus, because this is for them a way to feel important. And their commitment will just multiply just because of this retention bonus, which is granted. And which is all that I think the ROI is worth it, definitely.
Absolutely. And related to that, the survey yesterday that I did demonstrated that people are valuing autonomy and flexibility, and that as a key factor, and very much so. There's a shift right now, especially in the US, a key market for us, of companies going back into the office. And a lot of reasons why people are looking to now move is because they want to remain fully remote. They don't want to go back into the office. That they're valuing above a salary increase or above a bonus. So I don't know what you're finding, Jessica, but what signals should companies be watching out for to detect churn risk early? And what are your thoughts on the whole shift in working patterns? Is that having an effect as well, do you think?
It's definitely having an effect just based on research and polls and chatting with thousands of candidates. I mean, Deel, we've hired over 1,000 people year to date so far. So companies do a really bad job at being proactive, and they're too reactive, right? So you've seen comp increases slow over the last few years. So if you have someone internal on Pauline's team who's maybe been here, who is a high potential, Pauline can grow that person internally. But if your increases are stagnant, then the pace of the external market is going to outpace that person internally. And I think companies get very hung up on very strict guardrails about comp increases for internal team members. I've seen a lot of companies that, oh, we only do a 10% increase for someone internally, when the reality is it doesn't keep up with the pace of the external market. I love Pauline's push on retention, retention bonuses or some other ways to retain people. It doesn't have to be a lot, but having that proactive nod to their commitment goes a lot further than a small increase that probably comes with a promotion and a lot more responsibility. You're going to retain that person a lot longer if you're having that proactive conversation. From a talent perspective, I mean, people have said, I've even hired people on my team recently that have come from JP Morgan, et cetera, that are calling people back to the office. And they've said, I'm actually willing to take a pay cut because I don't want to go I want to be able to choose where I work. And so you are seeing with a more distributed workforce globally, again, post pandemic, you are seeing people that are willing to take a pay cut because the trade off to them, which is more important, is that work life balance, that flexibility, and that autonomy.
Yeah, and it's important. I know that this survey had a big participation from attendees or participants from the tech space, SaaS companies, scale up businesses, and there is a lot of volatility in that space. There is reduced investment from LPs, from VCs. And so that has had a knock-on effect on business performance and growth, which I think has led to nervousness with a bunch of candidates who wanting potentially more security and wanting to see. There's a lot of due diligence going on right now when we're presenting opportunities to candidates because we sit right in that heart of startup. We work with companies that are Series A to D, and they're asking about ARR, they're asking about a runway, they're asking about their clients. And so they're really putting a lot of emphasis on it because most recently they've probably been bitten. So once bitten, twice shy. And there is that potentially comment on as well that it's important to address those full on. If you are a startup or a scale up, really have to address those concerns that a lot of these candidates coming with, bearing in mind you are a startup or scale up with potentially limited funds. I think there's a lot of upside in working for a scale up, of course, but I don't know if that resonates with you as well, Pauline, Jessica.
Definitely. I think that, as you just said, I don't know very well the US environment, but for Europe, I think that private equity has been super generous again, I think from 2020 to 2022. And then we had the 22-25, that was a terrible cycle with a lot of layoffs. And now I think candidates are definitely doing kind of a due diligence, like a light due deal before they enter a new role. They are quite cautious. But again, I think that even scale up and tech environment can still offer to the finance community a lot of opportunities and interesting jobs. We don't have to worry too much because when the cycle is up or down, you still need finance people. You just need the ones who are, let's say, super adaptive and very keen on business topics. So I think those are the skills we need to nurture internally in our team, not only in FP&A, but in all finance profiles.
Yeah, I completely agree, Pauline. Yeah. And also something else that Pauline that you hit on earlier was cross collaboration. I think that being able to wear a few different hats and see things from different perspectives is one of those key attributes that we're seeing, especially in the finance space, that we're seeing people look for.
Brilliant. Thanks, Jessica. Well, I'm conscious of time. So what we'll do is we'll go straight on to some of the questions that have been posed by the attendees. So let's have a look. What are the most popular ones? We're looking at Judy's question here. With salary packages becoming more important for rare finance roles, are you seeing a shift in the types of benefits or incentive being offered alongside base compensation? What for you potentially, Jessica? I don't know if you guys are doing anything different when it comes to overall comp right now. I think we touched upon it earlier in terms of what CFOs are valuing more so in terms of equity and flexibility, autonomy. Is there anything else aside from that that's working for you guys?
I would say less so on the benefit side. It's more so on long-term retention. So anything that is performance shares, equity, long-term retention bonuses, those are the things that we're seeing. And then also a lot for growth and development. We're spending a lot of time on manager capability. We're spending a lot of time on internal growth and development. So we're kind of building our own workforce internally versus like always having to go external. And that gives that opportunity, right? So I would say it's really just focused on that long-term retention.
Right. Anything to add to that, Pauline?
Just agree with what
Yeah.
Jessica mentioned.
Great. Caroline has asked an interesting question here. Could you please give us some figures to sustain the fact that the demand for skilled financial roles is rising despite automation, that some competencies are essential and are at the same time rare to find, that will help a lot to influence the change management linked to the digital transformation processes we're in right now? Yeah, I think from a hiring perspective, generally speaking, salaries remain pretty. Taking a step back, this house of the CFO has, I think, become even more important in the volatility of this market. And actually, they've become very integral to an organization, is what we've seen in the last 6 to 12 months. And so, if a company or a founder has a choice to make between various C-suite roles, I won't name any, but they are probably prioritizing a CFO right up there, or certain financial leadership, because cash is key right now and efficiency is key. They almost have become the right-hand person to the CEO with the volatility that exists. So in that sense, salaries have remained quite competitive in certain markets, I would say. But yeah, I don't know what you're seeing, Jessica, Pauline.
I think that for sure automation is coming. So what I can see in my company being a marketplace or having a lot of sales ops and finance ops, we are definitely needing less people than 4 to 5 years ago, because a lot of, let's say, like order to cash system process was much more manual than today. But nevertheless, you still need finance leader with a robust skill set to make sure that those automation projects are still moving and that the transformation pace is the right one. So it will not fall behind the competition, for instance, or to be disrupted by instead ChatGPT or like for your own core product. So I think that it's quite complementary. The more you need automation, the more you need finance leaders able to visualize and to execute the strategy of the company. It's just that we are, like my boss says, spider in the web. We are the one taking from outside the company, bringing inside the right insights, right, to make sure that the company is moving at the right pace than competition and the environment. This is the way I'm seeing it. So I don't see any contradictions here. I see an opportunity for finance leaders to take more importance in leadership teams.
Yeah, excellent. And I think it's important with that in mind as well, Pauline, for finance leaders to continuously upskill themselves, because if they don't, then they'll be left behind and automation will become very important, take over their role, in my opinion. So I think making sure that you continuously add value in what you do and upskilling where you can will ensure that your pay increases keep coming and that you remain a vital cog in the organization, so that they can really highlight that you deserve an increase of salary compensation. So that's one thing that's probably worth noting. There's pressure, obviously, we've talked about AI automation, anonymous user here. Which specific finance roles do you anticipate will face the greatest salary pressure as AI and automation become more integrated into finance operations? And don't know if you've got any answers for that, Pauline, Jessica.
I think where I'm seeing AI push more internally are more on roles that are more tactical versus right. So I think for this group, it's going to take time. Like to Pauline's point about AI for generating charts and maybe doing some of that high level analysis, but you still need a Pauline who's going to bring it together and be able to deliver that to the CEO and shareholders. So I don't know what specific, I'm curious to see what specific roles, Pauline, you're thinking. But yeah.
I'm thinking about that, like what's the approach to get some savings, like quick wins and maybe long-term savings. And I definitely foresee some savings on the size of the team. For instance, back to my supplier invoices, if I have 10,000 invoice per year, now I need 3 accountants because they can't just, volume-wise, I need 3 of them. Maybe with a good AI, I can reduce to 1.5, but with some supervision skills that I need to train them to be more in the supervision than the manual operating, putting the data of the invoice in the system. So I think it can go to all finance processes and like skills. It's just about reducing the number of people you need. But I think at the end, I still need an AP accountant. I just need maybe one instead of three. It's this kind of thinking I'm having with AI, empowering a bit my teams.
Yeah.
Same.
And I think there's, but what we're seeing, I think you alluded to earlier, Pauline, the transactional function is being automated a lot, payroll, payables, collections as well in certain examples. But yeah, we're seeing a whole suite of AI tools across the piece, really. I spoke to a company the other day who's now disrupting the SEC space, external reporting, which is obviously, it's a job that needs to be done very carefully. Companies have made big mistakes on that front before and have paid billions and billions. But even at that level, there's software packages, systems that are being utilized to help efficiency and speed up that process, which is very manual and it can take a very long time to do external reporting. So yeah, it was a hotly debated topic in our CFO roundtable in terms of what technologies are working and what's not working. Once again, it's going back to the point of what works for you ultimately. Another question from Ronald. Hey, Ronald, I know you. What is the current trend in equity option vesting for CFOs? Specifically, do CFOs typically retain a portion of their vested or unvested options if they leave after 1 or 2 years? I'm going to come straight to you on this, Jessica. What are your thoughts on that question?
This is such a hot topic right now. I mean, everyone in finance should be concerned about dilution of their equity. And so, what I'm seeing trend wise on a lot of webinars on this is companies are pulling back their vesting schedules. So, allowing vests to happen more frequently and earlier to retain people at the onset, and then continuing to give either 2-to-1 or 3-to-1 ongoing awards to really retain people. So you're seeing companies pull it forward to say, actually, I want you to vest earlier because it's going to keep you longer, especially if we keep giving you refresh awards. So you may see that typical 4-year vest now moving to I've seen some organizations move to like 2-year, or a significant portion that vest even in the first 6 months of hire. And then as far as retaining a portion after someone leaves, depends on the country, it depends on your type of equity that you're given, et cetera. But
Yeah, great. And just quoting the report here, of those who have equity benefits, 20% vest on a monthly schedule, 25% vest annually, 13% do so over 3 years, and 38% vest over 4 years. The vesting over 4 years is therefore the most common schedule, is what we've seen from the participants on this benchmark report. So hopefully that helps.
yeah. And the other thing I'm seeing a lot more organizations do is performance shares, right? So depending on the maturity of your business, you may have certain milestones that you want to hit in 3, 5, 7 years. And so it's putting in those kind of performance share plans to like really, especially for your finance executives, to really drive that long-term retention.
Yeah, brilliant. Excellent. I don't know if we've got time for one more. So, yeah, just very quickly, with robotic process automation and AI, the reporting department and investor relations might face reduction. However, commercial and ops finance will expand. That is my view. Oh, that's sort of question. Oh, well, this will take 5, 10 years. Don't know if that was a question or a statement. But in any case, thank you, Jessica and Pauline, for getting involved and being on the panel. Your insights have been invaluable. And obviously, what a fantastic report. All the attendees today will get their copy, I think, over the coming hours. So take a dive, take a read, use it how you wish. And you'll also get a recording of this webinar as well. So thank you for joining, and I hope you have a good rest of the day. Thanks all.